Any idea what we're going to talk about?
Do I have any idea what we're going to talk about? No. The whole point of this episode was to get started.
Yep.
So yeah, what are we talking about?
We're talking about getting started with this podcast. I have an idea of what we want to do.
All right, what's the idea?
I said we.
She has the idea, y'all. She said we have an idea. She got all the ideas. I'm gonna be working off of those ideas.
A few minutes later.
Okay. So. The podcast. So, okay.
Welcome to the podcast. That's what it's called right now.
Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the podcast.
We do have some ideas though. One of them, honestly.
They don't even know who you are, dog. Like, we gotta introduce us.
Doesn't matter.
Right,
I'm nobody.
Anyways,
no, seriously. No. Introduce myself.
This is, you know what I love? This is gonna be the most awkward, most fun
It is.
episode.
In fact, for the entire, I think this should be like the awkward podcast, the one that we don't know what the heck we want to talk about until we're here. We're gonna set up and then figure out.
And then just start blabbing about stuff.
Exactly.
All right.
You're a go yapper though. I'm also fun. I'm not so much with me.
All right.
But yeah, I would just have to keep up with Bishop.
All right. So welcome to the podcast, everybody. The name is Bishop, and I'm with my girl here, Jenny. So
yeah, the name is Jenny, and that it's called the podcast. But one of the names that we're thinking about is Broke and Building. Yeah, tell me what you think about that name. No, I don't care. Honestly.
all right.
The name's gonna be Broke and Building. Welcome to Broke and Building. And so
The short story, there's a longer story which we're gonna get into. So the short story is Jenny and I are colleagues. We work together, and we bounce off a lot of crazy ideas off each other. I'm a little bit of a creative myself, so I do some film, music production, all that kind of stuff. And I learned that Jenny has always wanted to go into content creation, podcast type stuff, because there's a lot of things to talk about, and she believes, a podcast setup will be something she wanted to explore. And it was an idea that has been lingering in the air, and we realized, you know what, if we're not going to start, this thing will just be one of those cool ideas. So today we forced ourselves to start, which is why we don't know what we're going to be talking about. But I think the important thing is this is the beginning of a journey which we're exploring, which makes it fun because this is not scripted and written in. This is something we're going to be exploring with the audience. You're going to see all the awkwardness, all the planning and the thinking going on our feet. So that's what happened. Now I'm going to pass it on to Jenny, and she's going to explain to us why she's always thought of, content creation and podcasting.
why? Okay, so I think I've always wanted to do podcasts because I feel like there's like tons of like shit that goes throughout my head. Not shit, a lot of ideas. I have a lot of thoughts, and sometimes I feel like I sort of like feel like maybe it's just me that have like random ideas just floating through, whether it makes sense or not. And I've wanted to have a space that I could just like pour out some of those ideas, because what I've realized is like having too much of like random stuff or thought drives you nuts at some point.
It clogs your brain.
It clogs the brain, and yeah, right. And so I've just been wanting to have a space where I can pour this, and hopefully I'm not alone, that other people can like share maybe their own experiences with these feelings and thoughts. And so, however, the hold up for me has been myself. and myself in the sense that one, I consider myself somewhat of maybe have a little sense of photography and do a little bit of videography, but I don't consider myself competent enough to maybe do this setup that Bishop has helped with for the setup part, and so it's just that whole needing something to be perfection or good enough that I think other will be interested in. That has been like the hold up for me. And secondly, I think besides that, it's like I've always found excuses as to why I couldn't do this. I'm like, I don't have a camera. Oh my gosh, this place is not even cool enough. No,
I know that.
And so it's just like the feeling of like not feeling competent or like lacking. The feeling of I convince myself that I lack something.
That's
and
true.
I go through all of like these like personal development and motivational speaking, and I hear like you are your own biggest
own barrier,
and I'm like, I know. I know. And then I'm like, what are you gonna do about it? I'm like, me? Nope, nothing. But until I actually got this job and met you, Bishop, and found out that you just, I don't know how you operate or function, but I'm like, what the hell? If you don't mind joining me, who have like these ideas, and I know you also have like tons.
I have
Guys, he's a philosopher. Can you imagine? He has a degree in philosophy.
Yes.
So he's like a thinking thing. Imagine.
Yeah.
He's like just have a lot of thoughts in his like. I consider him one of like the most random knowledgeable person that I know. Like he knows about almost anything. He's like one of those, again, it's not even in a bad way. It's like if you hear the word jack of all trades, I'm like, you're the person that like know a little bit of everything.
That's fair.
But what I like about you compared to other people that I've met, or honestly, is you have an idea, you have those ideas about those different things, but you have a way of like explaining it, or not just explaining, but like passing that knowledge on to another person without making the person seem dumb.
That's
a skill that a lot of people struggle with. Being knowledgeable is one thing, but being able to maybe pass that knowledge on to another person without like making them feel stupid. In most cases.
I think there's an explanation to that actually. Now that you mentioned it, it's because what drives my need to know is I primarily consider myself an educator. This starts way early back in my childhood. At school, I was, I would say, a little faster to learn things than my peers. And so when I was in class, like I would catch on stuff really quickly. I started reading a little earlier than a lot of my peers. So by the time I get to school, I'm a little fast on my feet and quick thinking. Okay. But when I loved my friends, so I was like, I hated to see people struggle with concept. So like I would ask the teacher, can I do corrections on the board and explain and simplify things? And I learned that I had this gift of explaining things. And so I would read more on stuff because I wanted to teach. So my drive to know is the primary goal is to impart knowledge to others. And that kind of drives me to read random stuff. So I would read science books, I would read on astronomy, philosophy and all that. But for me, the end goal is me sitting down, breaking something down to something. That's the fun part for me. So like, it's not wanting to know just so I can say I know stuff. That's cool. Because that for me, it's useless knowledge. It's that part where I get to, see somebody's face lighten up once I break down something. That gives me joy. So
and that's something that I've noticed about you in the last 3 to 4 months I've gotten to know you.
That's good.
Yeah, sure. And so with that said, he has again those knowledge upon my own random thoughts.
Yeah.
Because I also love looking at random stuff. Random stuff. I'll leave it at that.
Yes.
And and you have not just the knowledge, you also have like certain like physical skills, like the fact that you're a creative person and you love being in these spaces, like in theater. By the way, he did theater.
Oh yeah.
And you have this idea of you know
And
how
I did
to
music as well.
Music,
I
yeah,
did hip
theater.
hop. I'm a rapper.
Rapper.
So I did theater acting.
Exactly. And so with those skills, I feel like I felt confident that we could like start something and it will be something good. At least you will help me with the video. I will give you my own thoughts about it, but you are the expert here, and so this is what I feel confident to like reach out to Bishop and like, hey, what do you think about a podcast? And he was like, oh yeah, and what are you gonna call it? And I already had a name. Well, I had a name for my personal brand, but Bishop was like, okay, but the podcast can just like be Broken Building. I'm like, Broken Building.
Yeah.
BB,
So
BNB.
there's actually there's a funnier version of it. This is we're in the office. Like I said, I work with Jenny, so we literally she sits across from me from the office. So every time she has something, she's working on something, I would just scoot over my chair and then I would look. And she was working on her personal brand, and I think it was more of a personal introduction, personal story, and all that. So she would usually share it with me and say, "What you think?" And this one time, she's like, I have something. Can you read it and tell me what you think? And the first line, it's literally, "Hi, I'm this many years old." I'm not gonna say how old she is. I'm broke and building. That was like the opening line. I think that was the most. I mean, it's the catchiest way to introduce yourself. And it's also one of the most honest ways to introduce yourself, because it was just like, line one, I'm broke in building. I was like, okay, I could, like a lot of people our age, I would say my age, her age, just coming straight out of college, could relate to just that line, like being broke and building, because it's not self-deprecating. It's very self-aware, but it's also, there's an optimism. The building part I love, because it wasn't just I'm broke, and it's easy to say I'm broke and everything is just messed up. But she was like, nah, I'm broke, I know that part, but I'm broke and building. So I think when I saw that, there's a powerful, conversation that could be unpacked out of just that. And when she said, I'm thinking of a podcast, and what can we call it? And I remember that. I was like, yeah, we could just go with broken building, because I think it's a powerful statement. It sounds funny until you really think about it. It's self-aware, it's understanding circumstance, but it's also optimistic. It's commitment to building. And I think both of us relate to that, coming straight out of college, got our first job. So we're still figuring a lot of things. So this podcast, I think, is going to mirror around those concepts of just who we are, how we're here. And I believe there's a lot of people around our age, college, just after college, grad school, whatever, but that, 20s, 30s range that could relate to some of the subject matter. So I think that's why I also, I suggested broken building, because I thought it was funny at first. I was cracking up.
But I don't know which was where this name came from, because I was gonna introduce myself in a really 30-second video, but like, hey, I'm Jenny and I'm 20-something, broke and building. And so I wrote it. I cracked up. I actually I was like, that's the first time for me to like write. If that was a caption, that's like a caption that I feel was authentic, like real to me, something I would look at and be like, yeah, sure, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And so it cracked me up, and I'm like, okay, I feel like Bishop, let me hear what he has to say. So I showed it to him. He was like, he couldn't stop laughing. At least, he said it was like the most hilarious thing he said. So I was like, oh, okay.
No, it was.
Then, so look out for
broken building. So
Yeah.